an opportunity to travel with him from the cotton fields to a sharecropper's farm through a world wrought with danger and hopelessness to the mountain peaks where he achieved great personal success as a leader. His journey should motivate and challenge us to have faith and believe that even the wildest dreams can come true through determination and perseverance. If you have one or two questions, please raise your hand after he finished speaking to us. We would like to include all participants as time permits. Now we will hear from the Honorable Howard Lee.
Thank you, Ms. Mary. Again, I apologize, but I find myself as I get older to become more technologically challenged. But we made it through. My daughters always bail me out when I get in trouble. I'm just honored that you all were willing to have me come and exchange some ideas and thoughts with you based on my life and the travels that I have enjoyed and certainly experienced through almost 90 years now. In July, I'll turn 90 years old. So I feel blessed both to have a lot of friends like Miss Mary and others and to have the chance to be here. My life started on a sharecropper's farm near a small town called Lithonia, Georgia. My grandfather arranged a connection with the owner of the farm, and they spent their later lives there. I was born in 1934 on that farm. I had an aunt who died shortly after my birth that I never obviously knew. But I enjoyed my time on the farm, and fast forward, as I grew older, I was able to have a horse, a dog, and spend time in the field and have plenty to eat. So being a sharecropper wasn't all that bad for us. We did have a lot of cousins who lived in Atlanta, and they would often say, I don't know how you all stand to live here, but every year they'd come down with their cars and go back with all of the vegetables and everything we were raising because they had no access to that in the Atlanta area. But I grew up on that farm until I was 8 years old, and then my family decided to stop sharecropping and to move across the town into a more urbanized area of the town. And so I went to school in public schools. My mother was certainly the key to my success and what I enjoy today. My mother was orphaned when she was 5 years old and was raised by her grandmother because both her mother and her father divorced and both went in different directions. My mother did not know her father, and I didn't know my maternal grandfather until I was 15 years old. He lived in Columbus, Ohio, and he had changed his name, obviously remarried, and that's the first time I had a chance to see him. But were able to enjoy a few years before his death. My maternal grandmother lived in Birmingham, Alabama, and she was a live-in servant for a white family. She developed an illness called lupus, and she ended up dying there. My mother and my grandmother never saw each other after she disappeared from her life. And of course, I never knew my maternal grandmother. Now, I tell that story for a specific reason. My youngest daughter is today Deputy Athletic Director at the University of Alabama. And I think it's ironic that my maternal grandmother died in Birmingham, Alabama, and my youngest daughter ends up holding a high-ranking position at University of Alabama, just a few miles from Birmingham. So life tends to give us benefits as well as sometimes disruptions. I finished high school in Lithonia. I had my first success when I was entered into an oratorical contest. One of my teachers thought that I had a very effective speaking voice. And she entered me in that contest, said, "You probably won't win, but at least we'll give it a shot." And I ended up winning first place in that contest. That enhanced my confidence. From that point on, I felt so much different about myself and about my confidence. But then I lost hope again when I was in about the 10th, 11th grade, whereas I thought maybe going to school as a Black person, getting an education, wouldn't make a whole lot of difference in my life because I couldn't get a decent job. And so I talked to one of my teachers about dropping out, and her response was words that I have never forgotten. "I can't promise that you'll ever have an opportunity to succeed in anything. I can't promise that you'll ever have access to equality, but I can guarantee you this. If you stick with us and you get a good education and you listen to what we advise you to do, if an opportunity does ever come, you will be prepared and ready to take full advantage of it." That opportunity came in many forms while I was in the military service. Now, I have to tell you that I wanted to be a doctor when I finished high school, after I finished. And but I went to Clark College in Atlanta, Georgia, measured in courses that I had never had while I was in high school. Chemistry, algebra, biology, never had those courses in high school, but I had the audacity to think that I could go to college and succeed to become a doctor taking those courses. After 3 years, I was asked to leave because my grades were horrible. And so I got on a bus and went south to Fort Valley, Georgia, to Fort Valley State College. I walked in without an appointment to meet with the registrar and the president and convinced them eventually to admit me to Fort Valley State. They thought it was a joke. "You have just flunked out of one college. Now you're coming and telling us we should admit you to our college? Give us a good reason as to why you should do that, why we should do that." And I explained that I had a strong commitment, number one. Number two, I had a mother who was pressuring me that I was not going to drop out of college. I'd have to find some college to go to, or I'd have to deal with her. They admitted me for 1 quarter, and they said, "If you make anything less than a C during that 1 quarter, we're kicking you out of school again." I made all C's the first quarter. But after then, I got my act together. I made the honor roll, and of course, ended up graduating from Fort Valley State College. I'll drop in a few little nuggets as we go along that are out of sequence. For example, I was back at Fort Valley 3 years ago, where the president asked me to come because of my success and things that I've achieved. They decided to name a road on the campus in my honor. So I have a road in my honor at Fort Valley State College, the school that saved me, that rescued me after I'd flunked out of college, Clark, and gave me a chance to ultimately succeed in the highest form. I consider myself to be one of the luckiest people because, and fortunate. Um, so I went in the military service and didn't want to go, as you can understand, because Black soldiers were coming back from World War II. They were being subjected to the same discrimination they experienced before they left. Many of them were being killed in our home area. And I just thought it was a waste of time for me to go serve in the military when I wasn't going to enjoy the very freedom and democratic experiences that I was fighting for. Um, so I was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, and told that I would have to, that I was going to be a mechanic, a tank mechanic. And I thought that was an insult. Somebody with a college education being thrown into an area that I knew nothing about. I'd never even repaired a bicycle. And I was going to be a mechanic on repairing tanks. So I did something that made me feel good. That was the only reason I did it, because I had no idea anything would come of it. I wrote a letter to the President of the United States. Eisenhower was president at the time, explaining why I was being misused by the Army. And I went through a whole litany of things, thinking that I felt good after I mailed it, and I thought, well, I'll just have to learn how to be a mechanic, a tank mechanic. About a month later, orders came down from the White House, all the way back to my company, directing the captain of my company and the general of the post to put me in a position that was more in keeping with my training, my education, and so I was placed in a mental health clinic where I could counsel soldiers who were having difficulty adjusting in the military service. So I left that and thought that this is going to be a good way to end my career in the military. But then I really got upset because I went in and asked for a cup of coffee in the local town and was turned down. And I organized a protest, except the CIA arrested me and my friends, and I was shipped to Korea shortly thereafter. And I spent my rest of my entire military life in Korea. I came back home and ended up being a probation officer in Savannah, Georgia. That was the best detour that my life took. It was in Savannah, Georgia, that I developed a very positive relationship with an influential, very wealthy man who's a friend of Dr. King. And he took me under his arm and simply tutored me and mentored me. And he was a very close friend of Dr. Frank Porter Graham from the University of North Carolina. Dr. Graham was coming to town to make a speech, and he wanted me to meet him. He introduced me to Dr. Frank Porter Graham, who asked what my plans were, and I indicated that I was planning to apply to the University of Georgia for a master's degree. And his quip was, if you're going to go to a university, you ought to go to a great university and come to North Carolina. I had no money. My wife, Lillian, and I were raising two kids. We had almost no money. We lived in a very small house. And I explained to him that I just didn't have the money to go to University of North Carolina. And his response was, if you get accepted to the University of North Carolina, you will I will get you the money to attend the university. What's so amazing about that, and I'll drop in another one of those, tomorrow night I go to a dinner at the university. And this weekend I will receive an honorary doctorate degree from the University of North Carolina. But I came to North Carolina just to get a master's degree. And amazingly enough, Duke University came calling after I finished my coursework and asked if I would be willing to come and do research on early childhood education. They offered me more money than I ever dreamed I would receive. And so $9,500 is what they offered me in 1966. That was a lot of money. So I was just delighted to join Duke in that venture because it was a Ford Foundation funded project to try and find methods on how to intervene in the lives of poor kids to make sure they valued the opportunity to obtain an education, and also to intervene with young girls who were getting pregnant at an early age to try and get them directed in a more positive direction. So I spent 2 years there, and then Duke decided that they really needed somebody to come and advocate on behalf of the low-level workers at Duke, especially hospital workers and maintenance workers and people who were in low-level jobs. And they asked me to come organize an employee relations program, which I spent 2 years doing before I moved into the hospital and set up a similar program in the hospital. Well, during that time, I had another opportunity that I didn't know was an opportunity. Lillian and I, when I accepted the position at Duke, decided we wanted to live in Chapel Hill. And so we decided we wanted to buy a house, but when we looked around Chapel Hill, there were no new houses built in the Black section of town. And no Black person had ever lived outside of the Black community in Chapel Hill. So we decided to challenge the system and ended up buying a house on the east side of town, becoming the first Black family in the history of Chapel Hill to own a house in a white area. But we paid a price. The price was that we lived under the threat of death for a year. Our kids were threatened, and we were threatened, and we even went as far as to having a cross burnt in our yard. And it was that experience that pushed me toward running for mayor. When I announced that I was running for mayor, believe it or not, liberal Chapel Hill was split down the middle. Half the people thought I should run, half the people thought it was the dumbest thing they'd ever heard. I didn't know how to accept either one because obviously I had only lived in Chapel Hill 4 years, but I wanted to make a point. I wanted to send a clear message that we were not going to just sit silently by, because Chapel Hill had experienced some of the dirtiest, nastiest, and destructive civil rights demonstrations in the state of North Carolina. A lot of people don't know that, but it was bad here. I was not here at the time, but I was told there was a group called the Chapel Hill Nine that really was subjected to a lot of nasty stuff, including a waitress at a restaurant dumping urine on the heads of the people who were sitting in. So it was bad, and most people didn't think I'd have a prayer running for mayor. And I said, that's fine. I don't have to win. I still have a position at Duke University. Well, I made all these great promises because I knew I wasn't going to win. I said, if I'm elected, I'm going to pave every street in the Black community. I'm going to extend water and sewer in the Black community, because this community has been so discriminated against by Chapel Hill that we have to make up. I'm doing it not because of race. I'm doing it because of the greatest need that exists within the community. So I made all these promises and every time I'd make one of those promises, my opponent would say, I'll do it before he will. I'll get it done. Just elect me and I'll get it done. So I was achieving my initiative. I was achieving what I needed to. Whoever was going to be in the mayor's office had to make a commitment, or at least I was hoping to force the person to make a commitment to commit to do the things that I would do, including public transit. And on the night of the election, I was elected. And I turned to my wife and I said, oh, good grief, now that I've got it, what the heck am I going to do with it? So that was the beginning of a new life for me, a new birth in a way. I served in the mayor's office for 6 years, 6.5 years, and then decided to run for lieutenant governor. I ran for lieutenant governor and had never dawned on me that I couldn't win, but I wanted to at least make a point. I had the support of a lot of people across the state by that time, including Jim Hunt, who was running for governor, who gave me strong support. And I was the first person to ever throw a statewide election into a runoff, and I engaged in a runoff against a lieutenant governor who eventually became lieutenant governor, Jimmy Green, who is the meanest man and the most crooked individual I know of who's ever served in North Carolina. But Jimmy was really nasty and introduced racism in the campaign. I was winning until he had said in one of his campaign speeches that if the folk of North Carolina elected Howard Lee lieutenant governor, Black folk would get together, hire an assassin to kill Jim Hunt so Howard Lee could become the first Black governor. And that killed my polls just took a complete nosedive after that. So it kind of reminds me a little bit about what's going on today, to be honest with you. So I served in Jim Hunt's office for 4.5 years. Some of the things that I was able to achieve there was because of Hunt's support. He gave me a free rein to do what I thought needed to be done. One of the things I'm most proud of is the hiking trail that now stretches across North Carolina from the mountains to the coast. I made a speech in Lake Junaluska and promised that we would build that trail. Now it started out when I left office, we only had 400 miles. Today, the trail stretches 1,175 miles, starting at at Mount Mitchell and stretching and ending at the sand dunes in Mant Hill. So I hope some of you walked it. I see some hand clapping going on. I hope that if you haven't, go out and hike it. I have personally hiked over 250 miles now of the trail. I can't do the 1,000 miles trail anymore. I'm too old for that, but it is the most beautiful trail I think one could ever hike. We still have a lot more work to do. I probably won't see the work completed, but I'm confident that with the dedicated people who are currently working, because this trail is maintained by volunteers only, not by paid staff. And so I'm confident it will eventually become complete. So that certainly it gives you some indication of getting up to where we basically are now. I just have to tell you all that it has been one of the most surprising aspects of my life to be able to have enjoyed, my wife and I, the success we have enjoyed in serving the state of North Carolina and engaging in providing leadership. My wife, Lillian, started the first ever public school in a hospital at North Carolina Memorial. And of course, we have been recognized for those things as well. When I look at where we are today, I really feel that there is still a lot of work that has to be done. I remember my friend, Senator Hubert Humphrey, with whom I campaigned when he was running for president. And we were on a plane, and he had by that time been diagnosed with cancer. And I remember him clenching his fists and saying, there's just still so much to be done. I just get so sad because I can't be here to help do the job and complete the work, but there's still so much to be done. I have to confess to you that occasionally I have the same feeling, although I'm not dying. I want to make sure that you understand that I'm not sick or dying. But I do know that I'm getting close to that point in age where either I will be unable to continue to work at the same level and do the things that I've been so comfortable doing, and that eventually death will come. And I just feel that there has to be a greater emphasis on how do we really try to resolve and enhance the life of the young people coming along. I still feel just terrible about kids who are in public schools who are not getting a decent education. I started a nonprofit institute, and for 4 years I worked in our public schools to enhance that opportunity and raised a lot of money to do that. That was killed off, of course, during COVID because I couldn't raise money during that time. So that's basically a capsule of what I have experienced, the journey I have gone on. I wrote this book mainly because I felt that there needed to be a record left behind for at least one person who had challenged the impossible and succeeded. Not that it means that as much as some of the other achievements that others have had, but it might inspire, as it has done, a number of young people to recognize that no matter how far behind the starting line you start, if you work hard enough and put forth a greater effort, you can still catch up with the people in front, and you can still go by those same people in front. I started way behind the starting line and been very lucky, very blessed, and extremely fortunate to have caught up and to have enjoyed the kind of achievement that and life that my wife and my family and I have enjoyed. So I'm delighted you all are willing to take this opportunity to engage, to share with me some of your own thoughts, to raise whatever questions you feel comfortable raising. Nothing is off limits. I'll do my best to answer as clearly and as precisely as I can. but obviously this to me is a very pleasant opportunity to engage with those of you who study and who engage in evaluating and reading. And I just hope that out of this experience tonight, there comes more inspiration for you to continue. I am continuing to do a little of what I'm doing tonight. I'm lecturing occasionally. I don't overdo it much anymore, but I will certainly look forward to following what you do following our meeting tonight. So, Ms. Mary, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for arranging the opportunity. And now's the time for you to participate and give me some thoughts to chew on.
Okay, the floor is open. Raise your hand if you have questions. Rose, I think I saw your hand half up. Or okay, Rose.
There we go. I couldn't unmute. I was having trouble. Mayor Lee, I am very curious. Well, a quick question. My husband and I were very close to Jim and Lila Wadsworth. I believe you knew them back in the day. He was the director of housing. Yeah. But the real question I have is, I'm about to be 73 and I'm going out canvassing this weekend because I'm so worried about the gubernatorial election in the state of North Carolina. This isn't just a choice between a Democrat and a Republican. I truly feel that the Republican is crazy and dangerous. And so I just didn't know, given some of the success you have, if you have any thoughts on things we can do to help sway this election.
Well, you're certainly singing a song that I subscribe to. I lay awake at night worrying that if things go in the wrong direction, it will be the greatest embarrassment that has occurred in the South since the Civil War, because this guy is really, really dangerous. And I'm doing everything I can. And I had promised my wife that I would not get back on the road and engage in campaigning. But she's given me permission now to do whatever we need to do to try and try to slow this down. I just can't believe that North Carolinians will be so stupid. I do a lot of writing, and I just wrote this article that I'm polishing up right now. It's called "Wake Up, North Carolina," and I'm trying to say to people, you're right. This is not Democrat versus Republican. This is not black versus white. This is stupidity versus intelligence. And if there's any clearer distinction that one needs, it's right in front of our face right now. I'm just amazed at the number of people with whom I associate, who are educated people, who really are really ready to hand this fella their vote, even though he represents things that they claim they are opposed to and are against, the things he says. And, the fact is that he's one who says that the civil rights movement was a joke. He also thinks women ought to be heard and not, should be silent and not be heard. And he has all these ideas, and people say, well, he can't put them in place without help from the legislature. Well, I don't trust the legislature either, with the way in which this group has been governing. So I pledged to get out and campaign. I think we have to knock on every door and every chance we get to get people to think more critically. Now, maybe I'm very strongly for Josh Stein as governor, because I know he won't embarrass us. And I also know that he will get some things done. So I'm planning to get out and campaign as hard as I can for him. But this will be my last campaign, although I'm saying that. But both my wife and I believe that that's what we have to do. That can be our last contribution. That's certainly.
A good one. Very good one.
Thank you for getting out and campaigning this weekend too.
Marianne, I see your hand.
Hello. Thank you, Mayor Lee. boy, that's almost like 2 books you have, your story. Pretty amazing, and thank you for articulating so much information so well. My question was, I understand you had something to do with the founding of or the influencing Martin Luther King Day and how that came about in the state of North Carolina and some of the resistance there was to that.
Yes, that was really strong resistance. You know, first of all, there was strong resistance nationally to
Yes.
establishing a day in honor of Dr. King, but North Carolina was certainly the hind behind the nation in terms of doing it. It was it was not just Republicans versus Democrats that slowed it down. It was Democrats against Democrats, conservative versus progressive thinking, and so forth and so on. But the key person to making sure that this matter was kept before the legislature was Governor Jim Hunt. Governor Hunt, as governor, really used his influence and his power to make sure that this stayed on the front burner. He lobbied a lot of the legislators, as I did, and others, um, and we finally got enough people who were willing to carry it across the finish line, both in the House and the Senate. The other person who deserves a lot of credit is Dan Blue. Dan Blue, as you might recall, got elected to Speaker of the House. And of course, that gave him the power to decide which bills would come before his house for a vote. And he's dead now. Both key people, Mark Bass Knight and Tony Rand, both are dead, but both were tremendous giants in helping to make this happen. And then there were some Republicans who really thought that this was the thing to do. And so it took a long time. It took a lot of backroom negotiating. It took a lot of arm twisting. But I think it's now become the thing to be supportive of, and people who were opposed to it then are not willing to let that name be associated with it now. So I'm just delighted that I had a little something to do with it, but I wasn't one of the major players.
Okay. Annalise, I see your hand up.
Yes, hi. Mayor Lee, it's really an honor to have you join our call. I'm grateful that you're here, and I have a stack of magazines for Lillian at our office.
Mhm.
I'm hoping to meet you and Lillian in person at some point. I've
I
only
hope so.
only been able to talk with you on the phone. One of my questions is that, you know, part of the success that you've seen, I think, has also been a product of people willing to reach out. Are you still mentoring others today? And is any of that mentorship, does that involve reaching across the aisle and helping others to gain perspective, someone else's perspective? Because I really feel strongly that we need to find a way to communicate with each other in a civil manner. And I know that people are not always going to agree on everything. That's not human nature. But how have you advised others on tolerance and working across the aisle?
Well, thank you for that question. Yes, I spending a fair amount of my time engaged in dialogue in different venues. 3 weeks ago, I was asked to do something that initially I felt uncomfortable about because I wasn't sure it would work. A group asked if I would meet one evening and lead a discussion at my golf club, of all places. Now, I didn't think anybody would be interested in coming out at a golf club to hear me speak. And lo and behold, we had an overflowing room. They had to cut off the number of people who wanted to come here. And we engaged in a lot of discussions about different issues and so forth. And it turned out that it was probably one of the most enlightening, as expressed by some of the attendees, of the people there. I often speak with groups of high school students, and I try to get them to understand the importance of learning from history and not just focus purely on their own self, but how in the world can they go back and look at what happened years ago. And what they will find is that there is a repetitiveness, that some of the things that we're dealing with today have been dealt with before, and they keep coming back. And then Tuesday of next week, just as a smattering, I'm lecturing at one of the retirement homes here in retirement complexes in Chapel Hill. People who are my peers and who are in my age, who are mostly retired, and trying to get them to understand the importance of what role they can play to bring people together. You know, one of our weaknesses is we don't like to listen. We all like to talk. And I think there's something soothing about our voices when we're the ones who are in charge, who are talking. And there's a tendency to want to express an opinion and then not listen to the other side of an opinion that others have of the same concept you've thrown out. So we throw out ideas, but we don't throw out ideas to determine if they are valuable or have them evaluated. We throw them out because we have strong ownership. And then when somebody raises questions about that idea, then we get very defensive. And I think that is when it starts to break down. There is no purity on one side or the other. We're all impure as well as we're all pure. And we have to see another side. Some of my closest friends are very strong, in some cases, right-wing conservatives. Now, we don't engage in around topics that we know at the outset that we will disagree on. We let those just stay to a side. We talk about what is it can we do together to make life and opportunities better for the people we know, and things that we can do to agree on. So that's how we manage our relationship, and we have a respect for each other. I really feel that we're at a point where social media, social distance are the things that are breaking us down, and we make early judgments about people, who they are and what they are, and we use artificial and superficial descriptions that guide our own attitudes. If you're Republican, you've got to be right-wing. If you're Democrat, you've got to be liberal. And so we assume that. I've often had people say to me, you know, after we've had some interaction, they will say, gee, I thought you were more liberal than that. And I don't know why, except I live in Chapel Hill. And the other thing is that we can make jokes, take negative things and transform them into more positive experiences. I remember when I was campaigning in 1976 for lieutenant governor, I ran up on this fella who was sitting on a park bench, and I went out to shake his hand and ask him for his vote. And he said, well, you need to know that I'm a former Klansman. I served as a member of the White Citizens Council down here. It was in the eastern part of the state. He said, but I've been thinking, and I've been following you, and they tell me if we got to have one, you're the best one we could have. Now, I could have taken that in several different directions because I didn't know which way he was going. But I assumed that he meant lieutenant governor. And I took it at that from that level because I knew as a social worker, I know when people make certain statements, that is their effort to try and indicate what direction they're trying to move in. And it ended up that we sat, we talked, and he ended up being one of the strongest hard workers in my lieutenant governor campaign in 1976. And we maintained our friendship all the way until I think he died. And I could have ruined that whole possibility just by overreacting or interpreting what he meant. Because as we talked, I could hear in his voice and detect from his expressions that he was really trying to make a change in his life. And he was really trying to become more of a balanced person than just a one-sided person. His earlier life that indicated that he might be. So I often put out those kinds of things and say, listen, first listen. And then secondly, don't interpret, let people tell you what they think. I think it's Maya Angelou who said, if people show you who they are, then believe them, but let them show you. Don't assume that you already know who they are before they have a chance to give you the interpretation of what is truly internal. So I do a lot of listening. When I hold a session, I just simply throw out things that not to be disruptive or to excite people. I throw out ideas and then I let people come back with their own thoughts because I want to hear what you have to say, and then I can respond in a way that hopefully will help both of us.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Thanks.
You mentioned you had the magazines. Is this the newest Chapel Hill magazine?
Yes, yes,
Lillian is in that magazine. Yeah.
yes. I wrote that article on Lillian.
Oh, you did.
I did.
Did I know that?
I don't know.
I don't think so. Well, I should call her in and let her see the person who wrote the article. But
I
you did a great job. We really, all of us was just so impressed. We didn't know who'd done it. But we were just so impressed, and Lillian was very flattered with what you did. So thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I was a little worried how she might react to the very first line of the story.
She's fine. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
If
You're very good. You're an excellent writer.
thank you. All right. Thank you.
Okay,
You
Lisa.
don't have to ask questions. Just if you got something to say it.
Yes, I am so thrilled, and it is such an honor to see and actually hear you, Mr. Lee. I'm retired from Chapel Hill. I worked for the town for over 30 years, and I was involved with the what is now the Hargraves Community Center, and what they would consider the historic Black side of Chapel Hill. And
Right.
I heard your name a lot during my tenure there, but I didn't really see the connection until tonight. And I'm just so happy that you had been a part of that journey. And I was going to ask you, though, did you have a role in the Hargraves Community Center itself, in terms of it, making a difference in the Black community? Because I saw a lot of positiveness in the community, and I was just curious about that.
The center was obviously here and operating when I arrived in Chapel Hill in 1964, and over time I obviously became quite familiar with the center, and because it was really the center of the facility that was used by the Black community for holding community meetings. And of course, we during my tenure, we put a lot of money into trying to improve it because it was the absolute only community, physical community center in the town of Chapel Hill, especially for blacks. Now there was another center, but it was segregated and didn't allow black kids to participate in a swimming pool. So yes, I was very strong on that, and I'm just pleased with what the town has done in recent years to really expand it and make it a more accommodating facility, which occurred over time. So we started some things, but we didn't go as far as I wish we could have gone in terms of expanding it. But we needed to expand recreational experiences throughout the community. And one of the things that I'm proud of that we did do, I got a lot of criticism for, is Cedar Falls Park. The 400 acres we bought out there, of whatever the acres end up, and people thought, because during that time, that was way out in the country, so to speak. On Weaverdale Road, nothing was out there. But I had a lady who worked with me, Ann Barnes, who was chairman of my recreation commission. Ann Barnes and I got together and we bought, convinced the council to buy the land, and we bought it. But the town didn't have any money to develop it. So as luck would have it, 3 years later, I became secretary of the Department of Natural Resources. And all of the federal recreational money that came into to North Carolina had to come through me. And so I gave the first grant to Chapel Hill to develop Cedar Falls Park. And then those were the first tennis courts and baseball fields and other things to help get that off the ground. Now it is in the center of town. And of course, well-used, overly used, I suspect, facility. So recreation was one of the key elements of my campaign, because the university provided recreational opportunities for faculty and students, but the town could not use those recreational facilities. And so there was not very much here for non-university connected people to do. So that's why I made recreation one of my campaign promises. And we got it done. I hired the first full-time director of recreation. His name was Hank Anderson. Hank died, of course, a few years ago, but he did a wonderful job of developing recreation in Chapel Hill, and I'm pleased to have touched that as well.
Well, thank you so very much for that information. I was with the Parks and Recreation Department, and that's how I met some of the folks from the early days. Nate Davis and Fred Battle and just some awesome people. And I'm so glad that you were a part of trying to push that, to have more equality in the community, because it was lacking. But they have such a beautiful spirit. I just love that community center. So
It's wonderful.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like another book I'll read one day.
We'll see.
Anyone else? Well, I have something to say. I remember when you were Chatham County and Orange County Senator. And of course, I used to work the elections outside. So of course, I would see you at West Fitchburg Precinct. But
Right.
the night of the election, I would ride with Cassie Roscoe. You remember Cassie Roscoe and Dina Reynolds?
Absolutely.
We would
Absolutely.
come to at least a couple of your victory parties. And I know Cassie would not leave. She would stand in line because she had to talk to you.
Right.
Find out what Chatham County need to do. so we could get the Council on Aging, the one on 87, built.
Right.
So I don't know all that you did to help out in Chatham County, but I know that for a fact because I rode with her to Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
So can you tell some of this group, or this whole group, some of the things that you helped as you being the senator, about Chatham County?
Well, I certainly felt really honored to represent Chatham County in the North Carolina Senate. Um, Chatham County has always been perceived as a special place in North Carolina with a lot of potential. That potential now is certainly starting to come out. The aging interest certainly was one that started with me in Chapel Hill. There was a pastor here by the name of Robert Seymour. Dr. Seymour was pastor of Binkley Baptist Church, and he had gone to Sandy McClamrock and several others to try to convince them to put an emphasis on aging and to set up an aging commission. And none of them would do it. So after I got elected, being my pastor, he could catch me every Sunday morning and make sure that I was sensitive to needing to do that. And of course, I put together the first Chapel Hill Aging Commission. In Chatham County, we did a number of things to try and protect the county itself. One of the great threats to Chatham County was and maybe to some degree still is Cary. Cary was like Pac-Man. It was eating up everything to make it a part of its town that was within sight. And I remember the biggest fight we had was the Green Hope community. And I introduced a piece of legislation that would give Chatham County veto rights if Cary got carried away with trying to move too deeply into the county itself. I worked very closely with the leadership of Chatham County, and aging. I can't remember all the details. I'm at that age now where I have a lot of intellectual interludes, so a lot of the details go away. But I do remember being very strongly engaged with trying to help develop the aging program in Chatham County and the aging center and so forth. How is it doing now? I haven't been there in a while, so.
Well, I'm still a little involved in it, and they are still, it's under the county now, so it's operating a little different. Cassie died shortly after we got in the building, but the guy who took over, Lonnie West, he kind of picked up her vision, and we had fundraising, a Taste of Chatham at the Governor's Club every year, and all the money went towards paying it off, and so it's doing well. And then we bought one up in Siler City, so. But I just remembered that we would come over to Chapel Hill the night that you would win, and she would wait patiently to talk to you as to what did she need to do, what kind of grant to get money to make that building happen.
Yeah.
So,
I can't exactly remember, and I don't want to misrepresent, but I do know I had a certain amount of money. I became chairman of appropriations. And when I became chairman of appropriations, I had a lot of flexibility to move money around. And I remember moving some money around to go to the Chatham County commissioners to help with the aging program. But it was kind of what we called extra money. So what I would do when I wanted to help my constituents is I would take a certain amount of money and set it aside, wouldn't tell anybody about it until the last minute. Then I'd roll it out when they say, well, we don't have the money. And I'd say, well, I just happen to have a few dollars here. And that's how I would get money to go to the local area. Believe it or not, that's how the School of Social Work building got built. I squirreled away $9.5 million and didn't tell anybody until the 11th hour when we were getting ready to adjourn in the legislature. And I had lined up people to I put in the right telephone calls to the right people, and believe it or not, got it approved. The university's been trying to build that building for 5 years, and and it got built. But
Wonderful. Okay, anybody else? I don't want to ignore anyone. Okay, well, at this time, I wish everyone would unmute and give the Honorable Howard Lee a round of applause.
thank you all so much.
Thank
It's really a pleasure to reconnect and engage with folk like you who are, and I guess you all do this monthly, or is it?
Monthly.
Yeah, I'm just delighted, and I hope you'll keep me on your short list. If at some point in the future I do anything worthwhile, you might want to have me come back to talk about it. So,
Yeah.
Miss Mary, you're certainly a genius in getting people to do what you want them to do. So thank you so much for making this
Okay.
happen, because
I do
she's really worked hard to make sure that I stay on task, and I almost dropped the ball tonight based on my computer acting up. But thank you for your patience, and thank you for all you're doing to lead and what you're doing to contribute in so many ways. And thank you all for all you're doing in your respective ways to keep things moving forward. And thanks for receiving me.
All right, but I do have a couple announcements before you get off.
Okay.
Thank you all again for joining this evening. We hope you have enjoyed the discussion and have been inspired by the conversations. Saturday, June the 15th, 2024, from 9 to 11 a.m., Pittsburgh Black History Bus Tour. This activity is in recognition of celebration of the Juneteenth. August, we will finally get a vacation. We take a vacation once a year. But Saturday, September the 28th, 2024, we are excited to have the award-winning film, The Problem of the Hero. In this person, the event will be in person. It will be shown at 11 a.m. at the Family Life Center in Pittsburgh. The film will have you searching the internet for more information about this remarkable story. Before closing, I would like to give special thanks to our guest, the Honorable Howard Lee. Finally, thanks again to each one of you all for being here, and have a wonderful and safe week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good
Have a nice
night.
evening.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your doctorate.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Best wishes always.
Yes.
Okay, good
Thank you so
night.
much.
Thank you all for
Good
being
night.
here.
Good night.